Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank our witnesses for their continued commitment and courage in speaking out on behalf of the people of Hong Kong. We are all aware that we're in a contest with the Chinese Communist Party, a contest of ideas, and unfortunately for the people of Hong Kong, they are playing a role similar to the people of Berlin during the Cold War. This is a battleground in that contest, and we cannot underestimate how important this is and how difficult it is going to be given the determination of Beijing to crush the freedom of the people of Hong Kong. My focus has been on what can we practically do about it. I strongly support targeted sanctions, but to be frank, I don't think they are going to do much good in terms of deterring the Chinese government from these actions. I think more important, as Mr. Long mentioned, is to take action to withdraw some of the privileges that corporations doing business in Hong Kong currently receive. That's a difficult conversation we're going to have to continue to have. We've spoken also a lot here today about the importance of offering safe haven for people from Hong Kong, and I think that's incredibly important. And I want to make sure we're all clear. We have two pieces of legislation that I think are equally important. Mr. Curtis, Mr. Castro, and others have offered a piece of legislation that I have co-sponsored to provide expedited refugee status for activists, for people in Hong Kong who have a credible fear of persecution. That is a lifeline for the people who need it the most. A number of us, including myself, Mr. Curtis as well, Mr. Phillips, Mr. Kinzinger, Mr. McGovern, have offered an additional piece of legislation, the Freedom and Choice Act, which is meant not only as a lifeline, but as a warning to Beijing, because in that legislation, we also offered admission to the United States to people from Hong Kong with advanced degrees, business owners, those who have completed undergraduate degrees in the United States. The idea here is very simply to say to the Communist Party of China that if you indeed suffocate and crush Hong Kong, you will lose its wealth and talent to the United States. You will lose its wealth and talent to what you consider to be your greatest adversary, and frankly, your loss will be our gain. The point here is, again, not just to provide a lifeline, but a warning in order to try to deter Beijing from doing its worst to Hong Kong. And I wanted to ask the witnesses about this combination of efforts, and particularly whether they think that warning might have some impact on Beijing's calculations, because after all, they want Hong Kong because of its wealth and talent, and we know they are very worried about the brain drain to the United States, to the United Kingdom, to Canada, to Australia. Mr. Long, maybe begin with you. Do you believe that this kind of action might be noticed in Beijing and might actually affect its calculations?
Well, definitely, I think Beijing is under huge pressure, and that's why they wanted to implement the national security law in order to try to squash the movement in Hong Kong. But in effect, it actually reignites the whole movement. We've got a lot of people coming down to the street to protest, and they are obviously not afraid of the newly implemented national security law. So I think actually, well, Beijing backfired himself, and I think for the international community, we should have a multilateral, comprehensive, and cohesive strategy dealing with China issue, not only in Hong Kong, but also, for example, they will have a Winter Olympic really soon, and shall we endorse that? Shall we participate in that? If we are not, then what message could we deliver in order to hold China accountable? And I think this is important that we put this kind of angle, looking at China issue in every respect, in every perspective, including the human rights violation in Xinjiang, the implementation to Taiwan, the cultural genocide in Tibet. So I think, yes, indeed, China is really pressured, but we have to push far more than only words. But we need coalition, we need alliance, and we need multilateral and comprehensive actions to them.
Thanks. Anyone else just quickly want to chime in on whether offering admission to the United States.
I want to talk about the business, not to succumb to pressure from the Chinese Communist Party in suppressing human rights in China or Hong Kong. And one example, I think Kai-Ping had mentioned about Zoom. Actually, I'm the victim of being blocked. My account was being blocked by Zoom. And afterwards, apart from me, two other activists in America, because of our June 4th involvement and our forum on June 4th, our account was blocked. And then the explanation is that because the Chinese government had asked them to block our account. And then the answer to the query of the media is that, okay, in the future, they won't block our account, but they will block all Chinese participants. This is the way that the businessman behavior. The same with the HSBC, willing to sign on to the national security law. So business had to be held also, responsible for human rights violation in many parts of the world and not to support a regime that suppress human rights.
Sure.
Directed to him.
If I may just add very quickly about the issues of
Sure. You want to for about 10 seconds?
It actually adds substantive pressure on China. For example, the UK, when they mentioned about favorable opening of the BNO, actually it was met with severe criticism from the Foreign Affairs Department from Chinese company, from Chinese government. For example, Hong Kong housing market is sustained by Hong Kong people, and they're actually substantively owned by a lot of property developer from China. So when Hong Kong people flee from Hong Kong on a substantive scale, actually it hurt Chinese interests when, for example, our financial market, our stock market, our housing market are affected.